Hi everyone, welcome, thanks for being here in this final session of the final day of Artlands. In this moment I want to acknowledge that it is the end of this amazing conference, and I'm sure, I know my brain is a bit scrambled, so I'm going to do my very best to bring us through this session at this time, and I'm sure that everyone's feeling quite full. So our intention for this session as a round table was actually to be quite dialogue based. There are slight difficulties with that in terms of the fact that this is being filmed and all of our audio needs to come through microphones. So whereas we hope to have a kind of really informal, organic conversation, we're going to do that in the best way that we can with the facility that we have this afternoon. So it's hopefully going to be fairly informal and lovely, and it's just really great to have you all here. My name's Rachel. I work for hART, which is an arts and social justice organisation, which you've most likely just heard a lot about in the previous presentation. I have been working on a program called Project O for the past 3 and a bit years, since 2017, halfway through, and that's the project that we're going to talk about today. I will kind of go into a bit more detail of that in a little bit, but I thought I might start by asking you guys to introduce yourselves today. So I'll hand to you, Yaz.
Okay, my name's Yazmyn, and I previously was a participant in the program, and currently I'm studying media and communication at UTAS.
Awesome. My name's Holly. I work for hART as well. I'm not new to the organisation. I've worked with hART for about 10 years on different projects, but I'm pretty fresh to Project O, which has been a really lovely experience to be part of a program that I've seen so much about from afar.
Cool, thanks. So we're here today to talk about Project O, which is a program that has been running for a little over 5 years in the North West of Tasmania. And before I do that, I do want to acknowledge that we work on the lands primarily of the Talmadina and Parappa people. And as we're talking about a project that primarily has worked with females, I really want to acknowledge the matrilineal lines of those people and those ancestors, and the incredible strength and resilience of these women who, you know, would swim out into frigid waters off wild coasts to secure food for their families, and who have carried creative and incredible practices through incredible adversity. And these are things that we hope to honour and to channel in the work that we do, and just in working in the place that we do. So Project O is a primary prevention project driving generational change by backing rural young women to develop skills, confidence and agency. The program began back in 2015, and as I said, I've been working on it since 2017, so Scott, pull me up on anything if I get it wrong. But hART had been working in Wynyard and the region around the North West for quite a long time, had some really great relationships there through school and community, and was approached by a local member who had heard concerns from the community that young women weren't succeeding, and was hoping that we would be able to do something through the work that we do to address that challenge. So we started out with, at the time, a project that was called the Ophelia Project, kind of inspired by the story of Ophelia in Hamlet as a character in a play that does not have agency over her own life, and through that suffered the most dire consequences. And I suppose taking a look at that, taking some liberties with that and saying, well, what happened if Ophelia had agency over her own life? Let's play with that idea. So through that exploration and through research and development with young women in the region, what we found was that actually, these young women had incredible skills, resilience, they had aspirations and desire, but a lot of the time the opportunity was not there to meet them and the framework to reach that opportunity. So the space that we found to work in was to look at how could we sit in that space between the opportunity and the skills and the assets that are already there with the young women. Around the same time, the conversation around family violence nationally was becoming quite prominent. Rosie Batty had just become Australian of the Year and was spearheading that conversation in a big way. And we were working in an area that had been identified as a family violence hotspot nationally, and discovered that, or I suppose found that the place that we were sitting in and the work that we were doing actually could be a preventative approach to this issue in the community through a number of layered means, which I'll go into. So that's kind of the context in which our project arose. Project O works, has worked in school as an elective option, so young women can choose to do it as like a subject at school. We work through workshops, providing regular weekly workshops with a dedicated group of young women. Through those workshops, young women get mentorship in a whole host of different skills, primarily creative arts based, and they work towards events and outputs. So if you were in the previous session, Scott, you spoke about working with the individual, not siloed from the fact that they exist within a community that needs to be able to recognise their incredible skills and assets and individuality in order for that person to thrive. So through working towards community-focused events, we could provide a space in which young women had an opportunity to learn skills and to raise themselves up, but for the community to be able to see young women achieving incredible things and maybe shift their perceptions around what young women were capable of, and seeing strength in that. Through these layers, we work on advocacy and providing an opportunity for young women to learn how to advocate for themselves and their communities. And through that, we're driving community attitudinal change. And it is a generational project. So one of the things that I love coming into this project, and which Yaz, I can maybe ask you to speak about a bit as well, is that in a number of years we're seeing young women come through the project as students. Where the project is sitting now, the girls who started the project 5 years ago are now becoming our workforce. They're in university, they're coming through university, they're going out into the world. And we are seeing siblings come through the program and having this sort of micro intergenerational thing happening. So before I blabber on too much in this afternoon, I thought that it might be nice. We have Yazmyn here as a representative of the cohort who've been through this program, but I think it's always really strong to let the young women speak for themselves and tell you about the project. So I have a video to share, which might just give you a little bit of a context for the project, and then we can open up our discussion so that I stop rambling.
Hi, I'm Abby from Wynyard.
Hi, I'm Melissa from Smithton.
I'm Claire from Wynyard.
I'm Maya and I'm from Smithton.
I'm Holly from Wynyard.
I'm Mia from Smithton.
This year, my favourite event was when we hosted the Huonville Sheds. I learnt how to gather a crowd, so I had to help everyone in and tell them the rules and safety. I liked how happy everybody was. They came in and they were cheerful and they were ready for the event. They thanked us for hosting it for them. My favourite moment was when we accomplished what we were set out to do. So it was a really great feeling bringing like 6 of us together and then we like finishing it together as one.
My favourite event of the year was Tunes in the Tulips because it was just a day out for family and you could go and have like a really good day even though the weather was a bit down. It was just a really cool event and chilled and relaxed. I got to do my new 2 favourite roles, public speaking and stage management. At the event I got on stage and I was using the microphone and I introduced the bands that were playing. My favourite community moment was probably at the end when people just started getting up and dancing, and yeah, it was really cool just to see everyone like up on their feet and having a good time.
My favourite event this year has been Stanley Dockside because there was a lot of community and I met different people and I overcame one of my biggest fears, which was public speaking. I really loved learning how to public speak. It's helped me grow as a person and it's helping me get into new opportunities. It's made me more confident as a human and as a young woman.
My favourite event of the year was when we went on the excursion to Launceston. We met with Sonia Hindrum and she showed us how to make different things out of SCOBY. It was my first time going to Launceston College and the University of Tasmania, and it was a very inspiring place to be.
We hosted the Pro Show. It was really inspiring to talk to 3 empowered women about how they overcome their battles and set up their own businesses.
My favourite event from this year would probably be the Maker X in Burnie. I really like learning how to use the camera and interviewing people.
There is so much complexity and so many layers to this project, and I have such admiration for it and all of the young women who come through it that when I thought about putting together this session, I felt quite overwhelmed to think about, what do we focus on and how do I not just sit here and talk, lecture people about a project that, you can go online and you can look at and you can find this stuff. And what is interesting to talk about, and the provocation or the framework for the conference, the space between, is quite interesting because this project does straddle so many places between. And so I suppose a few of the things I thought about that I think can be interesting to frame this conversation is considering, and my provocation for all of you as artists, arts workers, wherever you're coming from, this project is expensive to run. It takes a lot of resource, and it's a long-term project. It's been running for 5 years. It could continue, it could evolve, and we'll kind of talk about what that looks like. And we get requests all the time from all over the country to replicate this project, and it's just not always feasible. But what we can look at in this room with this incredible group of people is how can you, in the place that you are or that you work, with the work that you do, sit in that space between the desire and the skills and the people and the opportunities that maybe don't exist, and what is the magic that happens there? How can you be the broker for that space in between, and maybe we can look at this project as a reference for discussion around that. Also interesting to think about the space that we occupy between services and art forms. So, we are kind of working in an area, family violence can be a really heavily service provision heavy space. That's not what we do. We are working between service provision, prevention, art, creativity and community development. And that is a space of a lot of tension, and a space where, as Scott alluded to in the previous conversation, things can go really wrong and they can go really right, and it's a constant learning journey that we're on. But one thing I wanted to start with when we were having a conversation about this session and chatting about it, Yaz, you said something really quite interesting about place and purpose and what that meant for you, and I wondered if you could maybe talk a bit about that.
Well, in the program I found that just working on the events and being behind the scenes, the planning stages, and having a lot of control and a role within those events just kind of gave me a sense of purpose, and then therefore a connection to the people within the community, because you don't really have a connection if you don't have any purpose there, if you don't feel like you fit in or that anyone's going to listen to you or want to hear from you at all. Whereas Project O, working on the events and bringing stuff to the community and being very present and a part of it, just gave me a real sense of purpose.
And would you be willing to just expand a bit, because you've just moved now to the big smoke of Hobart, and you're taking on uni, and I just thought it was interesting, your observation about moving there and what happened.
Yeah, I think I just kind of got sent back to how I felt prior to having, like I said, the sense of purpose in Project O, moving to the big city where I have maybe 2 or 3 people I actually know by the time I get there. No job, my role is pretty much just to live and go to school. I didn't really have a sense of purpose, I didn't really have a connection to anything. I was in Hobart and that was super cool, but then what? I don't know anyone. And I think just trying to find work as well, it was all pretty hard, and I think you just need a sense of purpose to fit in, and then finding employment for me is what helped me fit in. And I think it does the same thing for the girls in the program, to have a role on an event. They get that same sense of purpose that they're a part of the community, they're giving back something and connecting with people. Yeah.
Can I throw a question at you?
Sure.
So, can you remember before you joined Project O, or just generally as a younger person, what your sense of connection to the place where you grew up was? Just generally.
I think to the people in my community, there wasn't one. I know everyone in the town, either by name or just their face. You see them down the street. There's not that many people living in Wynyard. That's where I lived. And before, getting a sense of purpose, the only connections I had were through school, but then there's not a whole lot through school unless you're interested in sports or doing agricultural programs and things like that. And not everyone wants to play football or go work on a farm. So I didn't really have any connection, and the only things I did after school was go home, or me and my friends would go wander off to the beach or something away from everyone, because we weren't really connected to anyone else.
And can you think of a moment or a time when you actively noticed a shift in the relationship?
Yeah, actually, people started smiling at me on the street. And I thought that was just crazy. Strangers would be just hi, and I'd be oh my God, hi. And it's not like people ignore me beforehand, but having someone smile at you and you smile back, it's you're instantly a part of I don't know, the community, you're that situation, they acknowledged you were there. And I think that shift really started happening after the first group of girls went through, because I was a part of the second group. I didn't really think about it before I joined, but watching my sister go through it now, I think the community does start to acknowledge that we're there more. I think now that we've brought them events and actually made effort to step forward and say, like, hi, we're here. Sorry, I think I just rambled on then, but like just getting that sense of purpose and then bringing things to the community and then people acknowledging us was a big shift. Yeah.
So I wonder maybe if have you got a favourite like event or project that you worked on?
I really enjoyed going to Canberra for Colorathon. That was probably my favourite one. That was a lot of fun.
So one of the first kind of major events, I suppose, or major outputs of Project O back in 2016 was a wild event called Colorathon, which was a 24-hour community colouring in marathon. It came out of, I suppose, the conversations that were happening between the young people, and the event brought together, maybe for the first time, I'm not sure, different layers of the community. So, around tables like this, you have members of the football club and the police and young women and young men and, just all sort of layers of the community coming together to colour in for 24 hours. I mean, not like an individual colouring for 24 hours, but, as a relay. And what I've been told is for the first time it's sort of cracked open the space for people to have conversations about these difficult topics. And the whole event was raising money for family violence services and shelters locally. So that purpose of, young women hosting an event for the community that provides a really valuable space and has a direct outcome for the community. So that first event happened in Wynyard down at the waterfront, and was so successful that the young women just wanted to run 24-hour colouring marathons every year, forever and ever, not really understanding the level of work that goes on behind the scenes to make that happen. But then the follow-on of that was that we were able to take that event and that conversation nationally, I suppose, and take it to Canberra, to the National Gallery, and had, such influential people as Rosie Batty attending and speaking, as well as politicians and, community stakeholders.
And it was Project O participants from all around the different places we've worked.
Yeah. So maybe, Yaz, could you just expand on your experience of that event?
Yeah, so it was a really big day. So one of my biggest roles, I think, was the public speaking. I did a lot of the presenting with a few of the girls from Roebourne, and then obviously from Wynyard as well. And then, God, it's been a while. And then, we kind of all got a taste of every role as well, rather than just everyone getting one role. Like, I wasn't just public speaking. And it was just really great to connect to the people that are also going through the program that we wouldn't have otherwise spoken to. Like, we could have always Zoom called or something, but it's way different to get a chance to speak to them in person about how the program works for them in their community compared to, like, the events we run and the reasons why we choose to run those certain events for our community. Addressing, say, problems in our community versus the things that they're addressing.
That's super interesting. Do you remember any particular kind of differences or similarities in communities that you found through those conversations?
About the communities in particular, I'm not quite sure, but a lot of us just could all connect on the fact that we all just have a new sense of confidence in ourselves, and that, again, made it easier to connect with each other because we were confident enough to actually begin a conversation with all these new strangers. Because we all came from quite similar small communities, but I guess we all just have very different experiences of the program as well. So I wonder, that is one of the super interesting things and valuable things to come out of the program that
I've observed, so over the life of Project O, I should say, it started in Wynyard and expanded across communities across Australia. Currently it runs in Wynyard, Smithton, Frankston in Victoria and Roban in WA, and there were iterations that took place in Cooma and Canberra. Have I missed anywhere? No. And what's really interesting about rolling out a project like this across the country is that when you think about that place-based aspect, you can take a lot of the core tenets of how and why we run a program, but it's going to be different because it's going to be responsive to a particular community and their needs and who those young women or people are in that community. And even, running it across Wynyard and Smithton, which are 50-something kilometres apart, there are differences that you're working with. But one of the interesting things that we've observed recently working across those two communities is what happened when girls that live, and I want to say only 50 kilometres apart, in a part of the coast that could often be sort of homogenised from the outside, who didn't really get to have a lot of conversations, suddenly cracked open this moment where they realised that a lot of the issues they were confronting in their community were shared across that space, and they hadn't realised. So this organic conversation was coming up around gender equity and their rights and their ability to confront, structural issues around gender in their communities. Their comments were, "Whoa, I didn't realise that the girls in Smithton were having those same concerns or those same issues, and how amazing that we're all in this together. Now I feel really empowered and I want to take this to the world." I was just thinking whether we expand on that or not. At this point, I think, having given a little bit of context around the project, I do want to open it up for discussion and questions, considering that provocation of the space between that we can occupy as individuals, as groups, as art workers, I guess maybe thinking about if or what you could do, what questions you might have around that. Comments, thoughts, I don't really mind anything, really. I'm open to it. So we've got Amina and Paul with microphones. If you do have a question or a comment or a thought, just pop your hand up and wait till they come over, because we need to capture it for the camera. Any contributions?
Hi, I'm on. Yeah, great. I have a question to Yazmyn, and I'd be really keen to know. It's around personal growth. So for you, I guess how you would describe yourself before the program, and after entering the program, how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, I think before the program, I was always known for being pretty quiet unless I'm with my friends, and like the same thing happened too when I started work after the program. I was always like picked on for not talking, like people would make jokes that I talk too loud because I'm not talking at all. But in the program it was like I had a chance to speak up, because a lot of my roles was public speaking or welcoming people to a space even, and getting a chance to actually use my voice. And now coming out of that, moving, all the way to Hobart, I now have, that more confidence in what I'm actually saying, rather than before I'd be too scared to speak up. Like I might speak in class to my friends, to my mum, and that's just pretty much it. I don't have anything else to say because I didn't think it was very important. And now I think I've just got more of a realisation of the value in my own voice, particularly, I think I just lost my train of thought there. But yeah, I know I have a value in my voice that I didn't realise before. And I've even noticed it in my sister. She's not so much into doing all the event stuff. I don't know what she's really into at the moment. But she did do a little bit of Project O, and she's even said to me that, she's gone out and found a job now at 14. Like she found her voice to go and speak up and ask for something that she wanted. So,
yeah. I was just saying, Okay. I really like about what you said about having value in your voice. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people didn't expect a lot of us girls to have that. Like, a little bit off topic, but I had someone apologise to me a few months ago because they said, I expected you to get pregnant. I was like, what? And this was after I got into uni, and I was like, this is crazy. And she was like in the same grade as me, but because, I don't know, she had more money and went to the private school, she thought, because I went to Wynyard High, lived in Wynyard, my mum had me at 17, I was going to do the same thing.
Was that someone from within or outside of the
No,
community?
someone that, within. I did go to school with her, but she, I never really spoke to her. Like, we just never disliked each other, but never spoke to each other really in high school. And then she kind of out of the blue, end of grade 12, was like, I just want to apologise. I thought you were going to be pregnant by now. And I was just like really taken back by that.
Mm. And, you know, it surprises me to hear you saying that you thought you didn't have anything to say. I met Yaz when you were, I don't know, 6 months or a year into the project,
About 6 months probably, yeah.
And in my time working with Yaz, she delivered a speech to the UN youth consultation, something.
Don't know.
But, you know, in Geneva, via Zoom, and flew to Canberra to meet with Bill Shorten to advocate for young women in our community. And, you know, you've done a lot of impressive stuff. So, yeah, just sort of give it a little shout out. Thanks, Jodie.
I think what I'm going to say is probably following on from that. So I think 2 years ago, the Peter Underwood Centre had a conference for teachers and educators and people who are interested in education as something that can transform lives. And we had Rachel and a number of young women from Project O, some from Wynyard and some from Smithton, and they very bravely opened the conference with a panel and spoke to the 250 participant audience about their experiences. And when we got the evaluations back, it was one of the most powerful things in the entire conference. And, you know, I think just to say that I'm wondering, is it coming through how powerful what you have to say can be? Because people will listen, and that was, you know, a really great example of how being able to hear the lived experiences of young people was so important, you know, to a whole lot of educators talking about education, but without that voice of the young people being in there, you know, there's a big group of people that are missing from that conversation. So first of all, thank you, and I'm not sure whether you want to sort of comment on that, Rachel or Yaz.
Yeah. Do you want to respond? Do you want me to fill some time?
Sorry, I was just kind of like got a bit lost there, yeah. I think without having, you know, someone to speak on their own story and if you ask someone else to speak on their behalf, you probably just miss a lot of it. Like, you can say the exact same thing word from word, but if you don't have the actual person that you're talking about there, you know, I just think you miss that. You miss the human element of it. You miss what they're really trying to say.
I think that's a great question, and a question that we should be checking in on regularly, because it's one thing to be the broker in the space between and provide the opportunities, and thank you to people like you have given us the opportunity to offer to the young women we work with. This is a big question. Do you know how powerful your voice is? Or what what have you noticed through the opportunities that you've had to speak, for maybe you and your peers? Have you found evidence through yourself or through your community of that affecting a change or affecting anything?
You're right, it is a big question.
It is a big question.
Yeah. I think change-wise, I'm not too sure. But recognising the value in my own voice, I think I saw the most value in my voice when I actually went out to try and achieve something bigger for myself. Like when I went to uni and applied for houses and got a house and then got scholarships, like I had to tell my story then and be very open and raw with, like, you know, myself, especially with scholarship applications. Like, they want to know that stuff. If they're going to support you through education, they want to know exactly who you are. So I think I saw the value in my voice there, in my story, in, like, if I'm going to move forward in my education and move on from, you know, we need to go see greater, bigger things in life, I had to use my voice, and that was very powerful in that situation, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is a really an interesting question, because one of the challenges, I suppose, that I see in this program is working with incredible young women and, you know, trying a whole lot of different stuff, learning skills, learning resilience and advocacy and all these things that we talk about, but still finding challenges within the structures that they exist in. For example, a school where a teacher might make a comment that is, you know, really confronting or offensive, or, you know, in terms of gender and equity. And you can be the most forthright, outspoken young woman, but if you're existing within that structure, that power structure, there's not always a lot you can do, and you can feel quite powerless. And I think we do always have to be thinking about what it means to be saying, you know, raising someone up and saying, yep, you can, you know, you can do whatever you want, only to be met by a structure that, you know, is pretty hard to break through. And yeah, I mean, it's just a thing to sort of put out. I suppose I don't have an answer to that. So obviously we work with young women, providing opportunities to do things like public speaking and thinking about what they're passionate about, providing opportunities to, you know, stand up and present. And importantly, we do that through art and creative practice, and that is a platform through which we can, you know, have these conversations and take these conversations nationally. So I thought I would just quickly show you, if you'll indulge me, another video. Last year, or over 2019 and 2020, we started working towards a campaign called This Is Us, which was a national campaign bringing together the voices and stories of Project O across the country and thinking about all of those divergent but, you know, unified voices. Essentially saying this: we are the statistics that you talk about, we are the people, we are human, like you say, we are, you know, people, and we have stories and we have value, over just being numbers and statistics and deficits. And so we worked with young women on skills such as animation, digital drawing, photography, filmmaking, audio recording, and created a whole suite of content across the country that enabled young women to share those stories and those voices. In Wynyard, we were able to host an event, a long table dinner, where we were able to lead people through installations of all of this content, and share these stories and, you know, share it to the highest levels of, you know, state government, various stakeholders, to have, for example, a young woman, who's grown up in the foster system and faced systemic challenges her whole life, share a story that she'd recorded and created into a podcast with the State Minister for Social Services and Housing, and for that to enable her to have a conversation. And she just recently shared with me, actually, that she's living in a residential care home run by Catholic Care, and she was so proud of her story, that her audio podcast, that she had shared it with, you know, whoever it is that's running the home and the institution. And from that, because she talked in the podcast about the necessity of self-care and moments of self-care, and so she was able to advocate for that, and they've now implemented a self-care budget for all the youth members of the residential care home. And while in some ways that can, you know, seem quite a small thing, that's probably a conversation that she wouldn't have been able to have just sitting down and going, you know what, actually I think, like, I would love to just have a budget for like a face mask and, you know, things that make me feel good and normal and, you know, like a teenage girl. Anyway, so I'm just going to show you a little bit of This Is Us as an example of the way that we're using art and bringing all these things together, and then we can continue our conversation. So a lot of the visuals that you see in that video, the sort of graphic visuals, were created through a process of mentorship and co-collaboration between digital artists, digital animators and young women. I think one of my favourite things in that is the line, "I'll show you what it's like to be younger and wiser." That's just so, I just love it. Yeah, and I suppose that's another interesting facet of the way that we work in the space between, is a really genuine co-collaboration between young people and artists, you know, meeting in the middle and seeing what you can create in that space. Any other questions or thoughts?
Is that it all? Okay. I just wondered, when you went to university, what were you studying, or are you still studying?
Yeah, I'm in my second semester of media and communications at the moment. Yeah.
That's so awesome. So when you go back, do you go back home often to Wynyard?
I've been living in Hobart for about 9 months now. I think I've been back like 3 or 4 times. So I'm trying to go back pretty often because I've got 5 younger siblings and then, you know, my whole family there. But it gets a bit expensive sometimes to drive all the way back.
I just wonder, what do you tell them about that? What stories do you take back for them?
From Hobart, like from uni. For my younger siblings more so, it's more about like how you can pick what you want to do, and it's not going and doing maths and English unless that's what you wanted to do. Because one of my sisters pretty much dropped out for a year, and she's only 15. And I had to convince her like school is a good thing. And then when she saw me leave, it was oh no, realisation moment in her head that when she gets to my age, she's got to figure out where she's going to be, because she saw that I left. So she started thinking, where is she going to be? And I think that helped her realise that going to school is a pretty good thing. So I think that's pretty much the main story, is just that go to school for my siblings. Other than that, I just work and go to school a lot of the time. So
when you go away from the North West Coast, how important is it that you go home and that you take that experience back to where you came from?
I get so homesick. I miss going home all the time, walking the dog to the beach, just having dinner with mum. I miss it so much. As much as I love living on my own and going to uni, it's a big adventure. But going home, I miss it so much. And I think if I didn't do that, I don't think I would be getting the better grades or even just happy to go to work. I just need to go back and see the things that are familiar and the people that are familiar, and have that in-person discussion. Like I was saying before, if you don't have the person there and it's just on the phone, it's just not the same connection with someone, and you almost feel disconnected to your family and the place you grew up if you're not visiting. I think for me that's how it is anyway. I just start to feel disconnected.
Having that space away from that place and those people and the experiences you have away, does that let you have different connections or see your home differently?
Yeah, I think I connect to my younger siblings way more, especially I've got two that are 14 and 15, and before moving away, they're teenagers, I'm not cool. I'm their big sister that just goes to work and school and tells them to go to school, and I'm not cool. But now that I've moved away and we have that space and we're not in each other's face in the same house, we just have more of appreciation for each other's company and time. And the same with my parents, because they can be kind of just suffocating sometimes when you're in the same house as them. But then getting a chance to go out and then come back and telling them what I've done on my own, and then have them say they're proud of me, just makes me miss going back and being look what I've done and look what I did.
That's so cool, thank you.
Isn't it amazing? I don't know if anyone else can relate, but when Rach was kind of sharing the origin of Project O, and that the invitation to start the project was because young women on the North West Coast weren't succeeding, and then hearing everything that, not that we're, putting you on a pedestal, Yaz, but there's so many stories like Yazmyn's stories, and it's interesting exploring that sense of the space between and how we can flip those deficit, descriptions, and it's challenging in the funding space, I guess, with that as well, because you are being challenged to design programs that address a problem. So when we flip that problem, these young women have made huge changes in their communities, and now currently the Project O girls we're working with are about to run a mental health event that's, will be intergenerational conversation starting, they kick ass. So yeah, it's just wild that Project O started by an invitation around such a horrible way to frame young women, and so untrue. It was just about finding those platforms to kind of flip that deficit narrative.
And what's interesting in that thread is that the event that the girls are about to host is in a space that they have identified as a place that needs its narrative flipped. Do you want to talk about that a bit, Holly?
Yeah. We got 10 minutes. Short thing, boss. So the Project O girls, we've been exploring advocacy this year, and the connection with Rosie Batty runs through, and she came down to Tassie and we had a Rosie Batty round table, which was, pretty fun, and it was getting together some of the cohorts of Project O on the North West Coast that don't normally mix. And, the teenage girls can be a bit territorial sometimes, so we were a little bit nervous. But as soon as we open these discussions around issues that are impacting our lives and that we care about, as Rach said before, all these parallels came out around how they're treated at school, teachers not understanding mental health in the education system, all these really huge issues. And Rosie and us as mentors kind of started to explore, lightly explored systems change and how do you change a system. And so this event that we're running is kind of the result of those conversations, and the girls identified mental health as their number one thing they wanted to work on. They wanted their community to be better equipped. They wanted their teachers to be better equipped. I mean, you have to wait 6 months to see a psychologist on the North West Coast right now. It's a mental health crisis, and it's young women that are pushing for change. So this event will be at the skate park, which is, interestingly, where both cohorts feel safe. They love skating. You can come from anywhere. It's just about skating. You can have conversations and check in with each other, but that's their place. They have ownership of that place. So we're inviting the community in, and we're going to have a skate comp because, why not? And we're designing discussion cards around sparking conversations about mental health and wellbeing. And the digital content we'll be developing to showcase at that event will be exploring how our mental health is impacted by our natural environment and where we live. So, yeah, it is really important and urgent stuff that these young women are leading, and they have the answers, and they just need the right tools and the right platforms with the right influences in the audience to really make strong changes in their own communities. Another aspect of it, which is really exciting, is we're moving for some of those young women to do mental health first aid training, and us as an organisation are doing that soon too, which is really, showing our support for their passion around these issues. But we're looking at potentially the call to action at the event being people in Wynyard and surrounds, community members putting their hand up to be trained in mental health first aid. So the community's kind of part of the prevention around this crisis on the coast. I feel like I really found my soapbox then.
It was great, I loved it. And one of the aspects I really love about that is that it did come organically out of conversations with the young women originally in Smithton, where they were talking about the skate park being this, for them, really inclusive, safe space, but they were really aware of the negative perception by mostly adults in the community of that space, and so they wanted to invite the community into that space and reframe it, and they were doing that reframing, narrative reframing. So the Smithton girls actually held an event in their skate park a year ago, which was wild and wonderful because they invited a female singer into the bowl, and the audience had to stand around the outside of the bowl, and this incredible musician Sabine Bester from Hobart sang songs from the Balkans in Eastern European languages in the middle of a skate bowl in Smithton, and it was just like wild. So there were just so many ways that they were able to reframe this space and bring their community in without even having to have a awkward or challenging conversation. They're just doing it through the act of radical art making. There's my soapbox.
Yeah. I think it'll be so exciting to see, potentially, if we get heaps more funding, which would be awesome. Anyone out there? Anyone watching online? But if we could take this model of, activating the skate park as a place for intergenerational mental health action and take that around the state and beyond, how powerful that could be, and how important and how different it would look in each community, because that space in between needs to be responsive to the individuals and also the different places that we work.
I think we've only got a couple of minutes. Any other questions or?
I've got an observation.
Yeah, into the mic.
When I started teaching, and that was a long time ago, in 87 in Sydney, they didn't even discuss mental health. When I was 18 and 19, there wasn't even a social worker that you could go to talk about your dysfunctional family. So you've come a long way, but you just probably don't, you've come a long way and you should take that on.
Absolutely, and we've got a long way to go too.
And what I observe where we are is, again, the space between the fact that for young people, it's actually a really developed conversation, like the level of knowledge around mental health and stigma and all sorts of things that I hear coming from young people is incredible. And what we see in their discussions is that they know exactly what they need, in terms of service, in terms of support, but the problem is the service is not there to, the 6-month waiting list, like it's not there to meet them. So how do, what can we do to be closing that space between, or, like assisting them to build that framework? Any other? It's the end. I think everyone's pretty like. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Rach, that last clip that you showed on the docks there, when people ask that question, what were you doing when COVID happened and everything kind of broke here? I always think of that event. That was the weekend before everything just shut down in Tasmania. So I always think of that moment, and it was a very special event. It was awesome.
Yeah, that was a wild time to be hosting an 80-person long table dinner, I'll tell you what. And what was interesting was sitting in that digital creative space allowed us to stay connected through COVID and to keep advocating. So that,
It's interesting, to be working on a mental health event with Project O in Tasmania, where we're pretty safe from COVID, but mental health is massive everywhere right now, and it's inspiring to have young women kind of leading action in that space with the freedom that we have to do that through events and things.
How's the best way we can keep contact with you guys about coming programs and how we can help get involved?
So many ways. I've got a card I can give you. You can go to the website bighart.org, Big Heart without an E. Project O Facebook page as well. I think it's Facebook/Projecto. Just chat to us. But we're always keen to, build our networks and build them across the state.
We're pretty easy to find through Google, I think. Big Heart or Project O, you'll find us right away.
Yeah. And what I would love to encourage you to do is to look up the zine, which, oh my gosh, I think it's bighart.org//zine, Z-I-N-E. If I get that wrong, I'll find some way to re-disseminate that.
Maybe they can add it at the bottom, editing this video.
But it's a, 20-something page online digital zine, which brings together the content created by young women from the North West Coast, Roban and Frankston, and it's pretty incredible and pretty powerful. And in there you can find things like audio stories that were created by 3 young women from across the country, which were also played on Radio National, so again finding that space to be able to join the national discourse and conversation. There's some pretty great stuff in there, so I'd encourage you to find that and share it around.
Yeah, and I guess another takeaway might be thinking about who your women that aren't succeeding is in your work, like who's that cohort, who's that key stakeholder that should be having a seat at the table, and how are we flipping those conversations?
Yeah.
Do you have any final words?
You put me on the spot. I don't know. Thanks for coming.
Maybe
didn't prepare anything.
If it's all right, maybe we can end with. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, this video, which hopefully should leave us in an uplift. This is the young women that we work with, and this is them in all their strength and glory.
3, 2, 1.
Action!
I'm Rosie Barty, Australian of the Year, domestic violence campaigner, working for women's equality. Well, you know who I am.
But do you know who I am?
Do you know who I am?
Do you know who we are?
Do you know who I am?
Do you know who I am?
Do you know
Who we are?
Do you know who I am? Do you know
Who I am?
Do you know who we are?
This is us.
This is us.
This is us.
This is us. Nuruba Naliagoro.
This is us.
This is us!
This is us. We are everywhere.
Doing everything.
Statistically, 1 in 3 women will experience
Hey, we're more than statistics.
what she said.
We are the young women you speak about,
Write about.
talk about, research.
So, it's good to meet you.
It's good to meet you.
This is us and this is Rome in Western Australia! Hey, this is our pool!
This is the Newton River.
Here is our cultural centre. Check out our courts.
This is us.
This is Frankston, Victoria.
We're right by the ocean.
Check out our town.
These are our houses.
Come into our school.
This is us, and this is North West Tasmania.
These are our sheds.
These are our farms.
I'll show you the lighthouse. Here's our youth centre.
This is us. We are so many things.
And we come together to tell our stories.
I'm not as shy as I used to be.
My voice is worth listening to.
I'm gonna travel the world.
I love hanging out with my sister.
I like singing!
I like photography.
It can be tough to be a girl. I am gonna be a leader.
I think it's time I use my voice. I wish there was less negativity in the world.
I wish that there were more opportunities for young women in my community.
I wish girls were taken more seriously.
I'm a leader for my country and my people.
This is us.
This is us. This is us.
This is us.
This is all of us.
Can you hear us?
We're speaking up.
Can you see us?
We're showing up.
Do you want to do something about gender equality?
Catch up, people.
We're
way ahead of you.
So thank you all for sticking with us in this 11th hour of the conference. It's been really great to have the conversation, and we'd really love to continue the conversation. There's your challenge, keep up with the young women. Thank you. And thanks to Yaz and thanks to Holly.
Thank you.